The Rooney Rule, the NFL's way to be inclusive in the coaching carousel. It was made with good intentions, of course, but at this point, I believe the effectiveness of it has run its course and it does not serve the same purpose it once did. Just for some background, the Rooney Rule was introduced in 2003 and has undergone a few revisions, but basically it requires that minority candidates be considered and interviewed for different coaching positions. If a team has an opening at head coach, they must interview 2 minority candidates for that position, same for GM and for both coordinator roles. Head coach and GM general manager openings require in-person interviews for both candidates, while the coordinator role interviews can be virtual. So far, this doesn't seem like it's a bad thing. It seems very good, especially in a sports world that has historically not been very inclusive or accepting. This seems like a good way to ensure candidates be given a fair shot. So why is it bad? First, let's start off with an example from this past offseason, where the Patriots, after they had fired their head coach Gerard Mayo, needed to conduct 2 minority candidate head coaching interviews in person, and there were minority head coaching candidates that would have been good fits for the job, or good fits for any head coach opening job. However, they were on teams that were actively in the playoffs. And the Patriots were not actively in the playoffs and were looking to get their hiring done as soon as possible. The Patriots conducted interviews with Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich on the same day, just 2 days after firing Gerard Mayo, before a single playoff game had even been played. Neither Pep Hamilton nor Byron Leftwich has held an NFL coaching position since the end of the 2022-23 season. The other candidates the Patriots were interviewing were the Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who they held a virtual interview with while he was still conducting his coaching duties in the playoffs, and former Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. And those two were the most coveted head coaching candidates of the cycle for any team, and especially for the Patriots. These 2 interviews with Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, because of the time in which they took place and the quality and caliber of the candidates, not saying that they're bad at their jobs or anything, but with the other candidates that you are genuinely considering, it was very obvious very early on that Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich were not legitimately being considered for a head coaching role. These 2 interviews were a slap in the face to the purpose and meaning behind the Rooney Rule, but they complied with it. They met the requirements of the rule and allowed the Patriots to move forward with the hiring of Mike Vrabel just 7 days after firing Gerard Mayo. This leads me into talking about the good I think the Rooney Rule does, and this isn't actually a great thing. It's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig, but it does do some good. Without this rule, Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich would not have had a single head coaching interview because they were not legitimately thought of as head coaching candidates. And even though it was fairly clear that even though they got the interview, they were never going to actually be hired, interview experience is always something that can be beneficial. Giving these people an opportunity to interview for a head coaching role, no matter how realistic a shot that they get, they are still getting the experience, and that is the only good that this rule does. I'm not saying that that's a great thing or that the rule needs to stay around for that, but I think that's where the good of the rule ends, and it's not even close to the point of the rule. So it's just kind of like a stretch to say, it does do a little bit of good, but that's it. That's the only beneficial thing that this rule does. Now to the bad. This rule essentially turns minority coaching candidates into a checkbox for teams to tick, effectively reducing these people to a mark on a page so a team can move forward with hiring somebody they actually want. Not only is this disrespectful to guys like Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, who would have known that they didn't actually stand a chance to get a job for the Patriots, it's disrespectful to legitimate candidates who happen to be minorities as well. This rule forces these legitimate candidates to go into interviews not knowing if they actually stand a real chance to land a job or if the team is simply ticking that box. When the Jets asked Aaron Glenn to interview with the team, he had no way of knowing if they actually considered him to be a legitimate candidate or not. Brian Flores interviewed for the Jets job, the Jaguars job, and the Bears job, ultimately not landing any of them, and he has no way of knowing if he didn't get one of those jobs because of his interview or his past, or if he never had a chance to begin with because he wasn't legitimately considered, but needed to tick that box. Expanding on Brian Flores specifically, we get into the ugly. Back in 2022, following the 2021-22 season, Brian Flores was fired from his stint as the Dolphins head coach, and subsequently had interviews lined up with a few teams seemingly interested in him as a head coaching option. The Giants were one of these teams, and they had scheduled interviews with a few people, one of them being Flores, and another being then Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. Daboll ultimately got that job, though a text conversation between Brian Flores and Patriots head coach Bill Belichick seemingly showed that the Giants were never truly interested in Flores. The text thread began with Belichick congratulating who he thought was Brian Daboll on landing the Giants job, but he accidentally texted Brian Flores instead, who hadn't even interviewed yet. This text from Bill Belichick ultimately showed that the Giants never considered Brian Flores as a legitimate candidate. They only considered Daboll. They knew they wanted to hire Daboll, and they were going to hire him. Flores was a Rooney Rule checkbox that they had to tick off. This string of events led to Brian Flores suing the NFL, but ultimately what Bill Belichick's seemingly innocuous text did was expose the fact that the Giants, and likely other organizations, treat the Rooney Rule as a joke, something people always suspected but was never quite confirmed until this situation. As far as a resolution or a way to fix the situation, I truly don't believe there is one. There's no way for the NFL to force teams to legitimately consider candidates that they don't see as the right fit, and whether or not that's based in racism is something that only those making the coaching decisions will ever know. The Rooney Rule was made for the right reasons and has had all the wrong results, and as such, I believe it serves no purpose for the league or the minority coaches within. Without the Rooney Rule, any head coaching interview that a minority candidate gets would be seen as a legitimate chance and would not have to be vetted through that minority coach of, is this a legitimate chance or am I just a checkbox? Removing that question from these coaches' minds is the best path forward. And if that means removing the requirement that teams interview them, I think that's the only logical step. As always, I will ask for your opinions down in the comments below. Keep me in check if I am out of line on this, please. And leave your thoughts if you think there is a reasonable solution to this that doesn't just involve abolishing the Rooney Rule and letting chaos ensue, if you will. And as always, drop a like, subscribe, stick around for more off-season content. And we've got some cool videos coming out pretty soon, as well as I will link my Substack in the bio. It's something that I'm going to be starting up. I'm going to do some season outlooks, one for every single team, and it's going to be going over what happened last season, what went on this offseason, and then any expectations or projections that I may have for them in this upcoming 2025-26 NFL season. So if you're interested in that at all, just check out that Substack. I'm not sure when I'll have the first one posted, but it will likely be on the Patriots because that's my team and I know the most about them. So if you are a Patriots fan, definitely check that out, see if it's posted yet. I will announce on our Twitter, which is also linked down below, when those go live. So again, as always, thank you all for watching. And with all of that said, I will head on out. Deuces.